I've had a lot of discussions with people who regard themselves as explicitly atheistic, and it seems to me that a lot of the discussion about religious belief in atheism misses the mark, let's put it that way. I tend to think of God, if I'm thinking about the idea of God psychologically, I tend to think about something akin to a hierarchy of values, and that's very much similar to the proposition that you're putting forward with the metaphor of the pig and the dog and the sage. That there are some values that are higher than others. And so I would say, I think that's psychologically true, that there are some values higher than others. I mean, we tend to put our families before ourselves, for example. And we tend to have a sense that we would like to be good people. I use this illustration of the relationship between values. Imagine that you're making a meal. You might ask yourself, well, what are you doing? Say you're cutting up vegetables. Okay, so you're moving your hand back and forth. That's not abstract at all. That's where the mind meets the body. You're moving your hand back and forth to cut the vegetables, to put them in the pot, to cook a good dinner, to be a good father, to be a good husband, to be a good citizen, to be a good person. So you're doing all those things at the same time, right? And each of the more particular things nests in the broader value. And the broader a value is, the more other values depend on it. And also maybe the broader a value is, the more other people can be united within it. And so I think you can come to a technical understanding of something like depth of value. And then it seems to me that the religious proposition is that there is an ultimate value that's either at the pinnacle or at the base, depending on how you conceptualize the metaphor. And that ultimate value is expressed in religious terminology as the absolute, the ineffable absolute, as the God that's supposed to be served. And in some sense, it has to remain ineffable and beyond comprehension, because otherwise it turns into an idol. And so what you do in a religious sense is posit an ultimate ideal, subordinate yourself to it, regard it as something that you can only ever approximate to, even in principle, and organize all the other virtues and defeat the faults in relationship to that highest order value. And that's more like, I think, part of the reason that religious traditions insist upon faith it's not the faith that the scientist types criticize, which is sort of like an empirical statement about the structure of objective reality. It's more like the notion that there is a hierarchy of values and that there's something that has to be absolute, ineffable, and ultimately uniting at the apex that we should be subservient to, that we should consider all our behaviors in relationship to. And so that's, there's not a metaphysics there in some sense, because I'm not saying anything about the final nature of that absolute value, right? That's an ontological question. I don't feel qualified to answer it. But I can't see how there can be an absence of an absolute unifying value that's superordinate to all other values without society degenerating into conflict, without people becoming anxious and confused and aimless, without the consequences being that we all miss the mark.